Okay, greetings everybody. Welcome to Lunar Alchemy. My name is John. With me is Bella. And this week in Lunar Alchemy, we're going to be discussing the shadow of limitation and one of my very, very favorite subjects, magic. This is such an interesting gene key 60. The shadow of limitation leads to the gift of realism, and eventually the acidic frequency of what is the city? Justice, right. I got my brain on magic, and my regular human concept of justice got completely like throttled out of my brain. This is such an odd gene key because in the description of this particular energetic frequency band, it basically says that we have no concept of what this is. we can't even imagine what this entirety of this energy exists as. So this is a very, very mysterious one. I'm also really excited about it because it is such a physical one that has to do with our physical bodies, the structures that we create in our lives. So if you've ever been attracted to magic, magicians, this is a fantastic contemplation, and I'm really excited to be here with our solar members. Hi, everybody. And I think that's all for an introduction, Bella. What does Gene Key 60 bring up for you today? We're a ways into it already. Are you feeling the magic, or are you feeling the limitation, or something of both?
I have this quote from this morning that is from the book, but I think sometimes when you take it out from the not that you take it out from the context, but when you look at it by itself, it kind of grows and becomes even more powerful. So this is a quote from the 60s gene key. Everything of true value is hidden inside form, inside your body, inside of the ferrous core of the planet, inside the vibrating fabric of your inner being. And for me, of course, the path of embodiment, the marriage of spirit and soul inside of this vessel, that's my path. That's what I work with on this planet. And the 60 is part of the coding of Gaia. So I feel like it's telling us about our form, our body, and the body of this planet, and how the magic of that is together. So for me, there, just with this quote, I think I could have a conversation for at least an hour here with you. But that's where I feel the magic. And we understand that magic, we don't have to go away somewhere or fly away in some other realm. But it's right here, and this is a portal for everything. That's when the everyday life can become magic. That's when realism becomes magic. That's where I start from.
That's great. I love thinking about this idea because of the way that it is popularly understood in our society as an aspect of fantasy, which interestingly, the next transit of the sun is all about the shadow of fantasy. So here we're living in the realm of wizards and sprites and fairies and all of these magical, whether they're Disney characters or they're, kind of deep archetypal images from some of the nature-based spiritual systems. Magic has this quality of a being that we don't see in reality, a being that doesn't exist as part of the structure of the world that our heads can wrap around and understand. And in our storytelling, these magical beings, whether they're wizards or magicians or what have you, they show up and kind of snap their fingers, and some event occurs that we can't really understand. Ironically, this same kind of event occurs in many of our world religions, where a Messiah figure shows up and performs miracles, snaps their fingers and heals people. People receive, thousands of loaves of bread and fish out of the water come, while they're starving, while the people are starving. All of a sudden, it's just this magical thing. And for such a long time, our society's perception of reality has been based on these older scientific models, what we might call Newtonian physics, where every effect that we can perceive has also a cause that we can perceive. So this kind of input output type of way of seeing the world, and oftentimes our human society has adopted this Newtonian way of looking at the world and looking at ourselves as well. We understand our nutrition this way. We understand our exercise this way. We understand so many aspects of our experience. And one topic that gets a lot of attention in our society is fitness and health. And there's a lot of people out there who are like fitness magicians. Like, there are these people who have been working really hard to lose weight or whatever it is that they want to do, and they're doing the things that they believe will produce the results that they want, and yet nothing is changing in their world. And then this fitness magician shows up and says, oh, well, you need to drink this green juice and cut this food out and only eat in this time window. And like, they create this structure, and all of a sudden, like magic, you start losing weight, or you start gaining muscle, or you start, your reality begins to change. So this energy is permeating our way of looking at the world and looking at ourselves. And I believe what's happening throughout humanity is we are integrating some of the scientific advances that have happened in the last couple hundred of years, and we're moving from this Newtonian way of seeing the world, where it's direct input, direct output, cause and effect are all immediately observable and perceivable, to a model based on quantum mechanics, this theory where these elements of reality don't really follow the rules of cause and effect, where two separate atoms or two separate electrons can be entangled and have the direct exact experience at the exact time, no matter how much distance separates them. Matter can disappear and reappear in different spaces, and the quantum realm, if you really begin to study it and look at the qualities of it, it just looks like magic. Like, there's no cause and effect happening here. Just random stuff, it looks like, is happening that we can't imagine how it's possible. So this is one of those things that's going on with this particular gene key. And this shadow of limitation is really all about what aspect of reality we are choosing to use to be a conduit for the energy of our life force. So Bella, I'm wondering if you have some ideas or insight about this idea about this shadow of limitation, and not only how it functions as a limiting factor, but also how maybe a magician can utilize it to create these magical events in the world.
Yeah. So the shadow has the repressive side and a reactive side. The repressive is unstructured and the reactive is rigid. And I was in a relationship with somebody who has the 60.6 in the attraction. And I can feel the 60 is the root gate, and it has this, it's a fuel, and knowing that mutation is possible, basically saying magic is possible. Something that is doing the same thing over and over again, like reproducing itself in the same way over and over again, it can change. That's magical in a way, because the way that the things are is that we are like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and look the same because my cells are reproducing the same way. But in that 60, inherently, they know that something different is possible. It comes from that inner creativity. However, when you see them most of the time, they are wavering sometimes in between that unstructured. It's almost like they're waiting for somebody else to come along and to kind of be that thing. And if we look in the body graph, we have the 60 and the 3, and the 3 is the mutation, the energy for mutation. The 60 knows it and has the pressure for it, but it's not until the 3 comes along that it actually happens. So to see the pain in that shadow of the 60, that they know it, but they just seem to kind of not even have a structure where actually that magic can happen. And then the rigid is just a reactive of that. It's a little bit like the 2, which is regimented when it tries to create from a place of reaction, and then it's imposing something because it believes that that's the way that mutation magic is going to happen. So you can see when there is a root gate that has so much energy, when we are in the shadow, it's extremely uncomfortable. That's what I can say of this one in the shadow. And there is
that makes me think about kind of, I feel like human beings are obsessed with the concept of freedom. Like even in societies where they kind of accept a certain amount of totalitarian government, for instance, freedom is still this quality that is absolutely at the heart of our experience. I'm curious how that, it sounds like what you're talking about makes me think about that, and how much the shadow can tweak on that need that we have to experience our own free will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you say that, I just think about not until we are freedom and love. How you can ask for freedom forever, you can ask for love forever, but not until you embody it is when you're really going to experience it. That's the only magic that's there. I mean, that's an answer, which is, it doesn't give you the equation to kind of get there, but that's my understanding of it. So what was I thinking? Because you were asking me about how to create the magic. I mean, I think what I was going to say has to do with the illusion. And I'm actually going to share the wheel here.
Great.
Because we are right now, you see the 60 here, it's in Capricorn on the cusp to Aquarius. So just that is magic, because those two are very different from each other. One is cardinal earth. And then we have the fixed air in Aquarius, very future oriented. And this has to do, as we know, with stability. And we've been in those gates and spoken about them the last few weeks. This is the last gate before we come to the start codon, the 41. And there is this illusion of endings, of saying, okay, there's limitation. I can grow more in this relationship, in this job, in this whatever it is, and that's what you're saying. Like, I need freedom. Like, something needs to die here, or where the body is so old and so weak that it can't live anymore. And then the spirit kind of needs to go out because it can't do anything more in that body. So for me in the 60, there is this illusion of endings, illusion of limitation, we can't do it anymore. And the interesting thing, the way we see it in human design, is that the ending is an illusion. This is a wheel, or I see it as a spiral. So the 60, you can have all kinds of feelings of, there is nothing after, or these are my last few breaths and then I'm not going to be in this life. But at the end of the day, it continues. Like then the sun, if we look at the sun transit, and in just a few days, the sun is going to be in the 41, and you're going to be like, I'm not dead, I'm still here. And I think that's the same thing when you leave your body, and like listening to all these people that have near-death experiences. It's not the ending. The ending is an illusion. The limitation is an illusion. It's part of the journey to go to the next stage, to go to the next expansion, the next magical mutation. So for me, that lies in the 60. And it kind of says it's never an ending there. So in one way, you're never limited. You're never not free. And those gates, the 19, the 41, the 60, and the 61, are the keepers on the wheel. And they are holding this structure of the spiral. That is what we say in human design, the program that we're all living in. And they don't have a Godhead attached to them. All the other gates in the wheel have a Godhead that's kind of the one that imposes itself on the gates there. But here they are simply holding the wheel, making sure that it's continuing. But somehow when we can see the spiral structure, it also means that we are free from it. And I wonder if that is something that we can also use for the 60. Once you see the limitation, once you witness it, you're not a victim of it anymore. So that's when you're going into realism, and you can use your common sense, because you're like, okay, I see it, but you also see beyond it, because you're not that identified with it anymore.
Yeah, that brings up so many thoughts for me. I mean, when reading the description of this gene key in the book, one of the first things that gets brought up is these aspects of human society that create this pressure of limitation, the red tape, the laws. Of course, these things relate to this constant justice, which is the acidic frequency of this particular key. But to me, it's almost surprising that the limitation of human lifespan isn't brought up in this gene key's description. I mean, I think part of the point of the descriptions in the gene keys is to sort of stoke the flame of contemplation, and not so much to illuminate every single aspect of any gene key that exists out there. But this idea of, okay, what happens when we die? Is this the end? And it made me think about, a couple of weeks ago, we were having this conversation about belief and faith. And I guess it was trust and faith, and what the difference was. And to be able to face death and understand that, or to have experienced within the body that death is not a limitation. It's like the mystical goal of any spiritual pursuit, is to have a direct experience of the eternity of consciousness. So, today, as you already mentioned, Bella, there's lots of people showing up in the world who have had these near-death experiences and are sharing something of what it is that they've glimpsed from the other side. There's also a whole side of the New Age spiritual world that talks about ascension and extraterrestrials and all of the different things going on in the universe today, who have a look at what they believe is happening amongst humanity at this time and to the planet. And you know, all of these ideas they're at the very least really interesting to contemplate. Could be possibly very illuminating to contemplate. But to me, it comes back to this issue of the direct experience inside the body. If somebody hasn't had a direct experience of moving beyond the body, or moving beyond the planetary sphere to be a part of the galaxy, whether that means that you have had some type of cosmic consciousness experience, or you know, you've been visited by good or bad aliens who took you up in their spaceship or something like that. It all comes back to this direct experience in the body. And without that direct experience, it's really kind of irrelevant. And our minds can chew up these beliefs and things, and or ideas about what is truly going on inside of us. But as we've been seeing it in the last few weeks, these concepts that we can engage with are not the truth. They're just like, it's like this yappiness that goes on in our minds that we're trying to hold on to and control the way that reality shows up for us, or control ourselves so that the reality within us can't be expressed. And that really, this concept of freedom within this gene key 60, and of the limitation, the ending, the death, and the mutation into a new birth. The idea of, I feel like within this particular gene key, the reactive and repressive sides of the shadow, there are so many enumerations of these two forms of energy. In the repressive, it's kind of that, like that energy, that denial energy that won't engage. And it's kind of described in the book as like, okay, well, here's a person that has no structure in their life, so they're kind of floating around, and nothing ever comes of anything they do. Well, another way to look at this particular energy is as a false innocent. There's another gene key that's all about innocence. And the false innocent is kind of like a side of that, where this lack of structure, this lack of engagement with reality is a protective force. And it's a false innocent because all of the activity going on, that lack of creating structure, is not an innocent expression of truth. It's a manipulation of reality to not have to face the truth that exists within. Same way with the reactive. It's just a straight manipulation. When the structures are understood and there's a certain degree of mastery of those structures, you can use those structures to control the outcomes if you have control over the way those structures are put into practice. So we're talking about the banks. We're talking about the way that money is a corrupt force in our experience. It's all because there are all these manipulator magicians out there, trying to gain a degree of security by controlling these structures that the rest of the world accepts and lives by. And it's, to me, it's really an illuminating thought that, okay, you can have a high degree of mastery over the aspects of reality and still be deep in the darkest trenches of the shadow energy by using those structures to out of fear, rather than using those structures to serve the whole. And it's just such a, I don't know, it feels, I feel like I'm still digesting this idea that you know, just because you have mastery over a quality, it doesn't mean that the frequency you are operating in is one which is necessarily a high frequency. You know, we, in our process of all of these discussions over the last almost entire year in Lunar Alchemy, and all of these energetic transmissions that we have engaged with, it's so easy to look at a duality of shadow energy, gift energy, bad energy, good energy. And yet this particular gene key reveals that the highest degree of capability within this gene key can be absolutely at the deepest, darkest levels of the shadow. You know, absolute mastery over the structures of realism being used through these shadows of corruption and the shadows of some of these other shadows that we've already looked at in depth this year. We're having an awesome discussion with the Lunar Alchemy members. I can't wait to dive in with it with everybody. Bella, I'm wondering if you have, you know, for everyone joining us on Facebook, the 41 is the start codon. So here we are in gene key 60, just prior to, you know, the aspect that exists within our physical bodies that begins the entire life process. You know, we can look from a scientific standpoint and say, well, where does life begin? How do we know that life existed? Well, there were proteins that got created by, you know, some conglomeration of the elements got together, and all of a sudden a protein was built. That's the beginning of life. That's what the start codon does. It starts that process. So here we are at the 60, Bella. What do you see for being at this moment in time, this aspect, this part of the year that the sun is going through, where it's about to begin this transition into something that's like a new beginning, a mutation? What's your perspective on all of this?
Well, I would say many endings and many beginnings. That's what life is in this realm. And we can look at different places on the wheel. So we know we were speaking a few weeks ago about the new year, the calendar year, and that was an ending and a beginning. Now we are here between 60 and the 41, and that's the Rave New Year. And it's the Chinese New Year as well, I guess, depending where we are in the world. And then when we're speaking about the process of deconditioning and more about the astrological way of seeing it, we have in Aries, not actually in the beginning, quite in the end of Aries, we have the 42, which is the nomad in the 64 doors that is walking through the seasons, and it's having flip-flops in the summer or walking barefoot, and then it has to use some other shoes in the winter. And it's like it has that complete acceptance of spring dying to the summer and summer dying to fall, in the same way of the trees and the animals and the humans that are recycling in the underworld and then coming back up, and the whole ecosystem. And then the 3, which is also connected back to the 60, interestingly enough, through the body graph, which is the eternal child and the new beginning and that kind of innovation and playfulness. So to just see that, just looking at something, one thing, as which is the wheel that we're looking at, the astrological wheel or the wheel of the I Ching, we have those endings and beginnings in it. And I think that is what gives us a perspective that actually is connected to common sense, which I think is a good word to use as well for the 60, because it doesn't make one ending super important and one beginning super important. It allows us to detach, which is the 42 again, detach and not be so clinging, which is the shadow of the 3, to things that actually would be, life would be a very different experience, a very more magical experience if we could let go and be like the nomad and appreciate what comes after. So for me, part of the 41 for me is an initiation. So I think in general, what I said is true. I also feel like we can look at each beginning as a beginning of a different flavor. And that is magical and that is rich in its own sense. So what I feel, we have been in the 61, we have been in the 60. This is individual circuitry. It has to do, and it's part of the coding of initiation, initiation, the mutation, transformation, all that. And it comes up through our body. We've looked at it also in the body graph a few weeks now, where it's individual circuitry, it's the mutation that happens in each and every one of us that isn't actually dependent on anything on the outside. Is this creativity, life force, kundalini, Boris, like all these words that we can use. And we're actually moving in the 41 into something that's collective circuitry. And it's on the sensing side, and it's about emotions. And the 41 is the fuel to feel. And suddenly it becomes very human. And it's part also why it's hard to die, because you let go of the people that you love, and the people that are left here are probably having a harder time than the person that leaves. So we're in this sensing circuit, which is the experimental way of saying, I'm a human and I have this fuel, this desire to live and to feel. And then it connects to the emotional center, where we have all the spice and the color of life through the emotions. And the beautiful thing is, if the individual circuitry says, I know, and this is my expression, when we come to the collective circuitry and the sensing circuit, it is more about, it's worth it with you. It's worth the experience. And I don't know if it's a failure, I don't know if it's a success, but it's going to give me the wisdom of having lived this. So it takes the human experimental way where we sense life. And sometimes it might look messy, but it's part of that wisdom, the accumulation of the wisdom of humanity. And there is a magic in that. There is a magic in daring to live, even if there's going to be an ending tomorrow. And that spark in the 41, we all know that desire to experience, like, yeah, I don't know why, but I have to experience this. And we go there. And for me, that's the magic and the beauty of the human being. We can fall a million times, but that spark in the 41 is still there for us. And
yeah, that really makes me think about the point from Gene Key 60 about the source of all, at least one of the early sources of this awareness, which is the I Ching, the book of changes, and that the 60 holds within it the natural progression of the movement of consciousness to right itself. So, that makes me think that one of the biggest things about the shadow of limitation is that we lose sight of the fact that time operates as a function of not only our perception and our energy, but within that function is the promise that things that are out of order, that have moved into chaos, will be brought back into order. And this concept is like, in the I Ching, it's almost central to every single hexagram's judgment, that it may be moving into disorder. Life may be moving into chaos, but with time, as well as maybe a few actions from a human that has the wisdom, everything will be brought back into order. You know, even if you don't get it right. So I love the hopefulness that comes out of this message, because I feel like, you know, having the 60 in that root and the amount of pressure that we feel from it, and how incredibly uncomfortable it is to feel limitation where our spirit is desiring the freedom. You know, it's this message of hopefulness that, oh, in time, everything will change and lead into that new creation that comes from the 41. So I want to dive in with our Lunar Alchemy members. If you've joined us on Facebook for our discussion, thanks for tuning in. You can learn more about how to join Lunar Alchemy by clicking on the links that I posted in the comments. And I'm really excited because we're coming up to the end of our first trip around the wheel with Lunar Alchemy. The very first Lunar Alchemy session was a year ago in February, and I actually hosted a solo, I think it was a full moon session with Gene Key 30. And then Bella joined me for the next one on the following Tuesday. So that's coming up in mid-February. And Bella and I are going to be creating the next evolution of Lunar Alchemy. And I'm really excited about what the possibilities are. So this is a fantastic time to learn more about Lunar Alchemy, to get more involved. So I hope to see you on a future discussion if you join us on Facebook. Sending you loving presents. We will continue with our members and dive into this juicy discussion happening about magic and physical health and death and all of the things that that relate to this Gene Key 60. So we'll see you next time. All right. Excuse me.